Hey, yeah, you. Quit scrolling for a second. Name's Ghost. Official Shiba Inu. Official supervisor of snack inspections. And more importantly, the official mascot of the Pizzaverse. I've watched thousands of humans wander around the internet. Some make noise. Some chase drama. Some think pineapple belongs on pizza. I don't talk to those people. But if you're looking for documentaries that dig deeper, stories that actually make you think, mob history, old Hollywood, dark fairy tales, true crime, psychology, and enough sarcasm to keep everybody awake, then congratulations. You found your people. Bambi Palermo and the Pizzaverse don't just tell stories. We tear them apart. Dust them off. And show you what everybody else missed. So here's your assignment. Hit that subscribe button. Smack the like button. Ring the notification bell before it gets lonely. Join the Pizzaverse. We're building the biggest social club on YouTube. And trust me, you want your seat at the table before the espresso gets cold. I'm Ghost. Good dog. Great taste in YouTube channels. Now go subscribe to Bambi Palermo. Before I start judging your life choices from across the room, see ya in the Pizzaverse. Disclaimer. Before somebody storms into the comments screaming, actually, relax. This documentary examines publicly available information, historical records, interviews, reports, and documented events. Where facts end and theories begin, we'll tell you. We're here to separate evidence from internet fan fiction. If you're looking for blind hero worship, this ain't it. If you're looking for blind hatred, this ain't that either. Nobody here gets a free halo and nobody gets a free pitchfork. Some opinions may be sarcastic. Some jokes may sting. If a little sarcasm causes your Wi-Fi to burst into flames, you may wish to locate the nearest emotional support blanket before continuing. As always, do your own research, question everything, and remember, just because someone says it on the internet doesn't magically make it true. Now grab an espresso, silence your inner keyboard warrior, and let's get into it.
Stop. Don't you dare blink, because right now I'm about to lance an abscess Hollywood has been coating in gold paint for nearly 100 years. You believed those flawless smiles? You admired their nobility? Forget all of it. We're going down into the basements of the Dream Factory, where screen legends turned into uncontrollable beasts. These weren't just actors, they were powder kegs that exploded right in their studios' faces. 10 of the most dangerous stars of classic cinema, whose rage, madness, and cruelty spiraled out of control. And trust me, the final story will make your skin crawl. An idol of millions who turned his own home into a chamber of torment, something even the police were afraid to whisper about. Wallace Beery was an icon, an Oscar winner, the star of The Champ and Treasure Island. He embodied on screen the image of a rough but good-natured giant with a heart of gold. Audiences adored his craggy face and bear-like swagger. But inside that bear lived a real monster, a man whose cruelty knew no limits and whose fists were heavier than justice itself. In 1937, a tragedy occurred that should have sent Beery to the electric chair, but instead became one of the dirtiest secrets in Hollywood history. It all began in the parking lot of the Trocadero nightclub in Los Angeles. Ted Healy, the creator of the legendary comedy team The Three Stooges, was celebrating the birth of his son. He was drunk, cheerful, careless. By a fatal twist of chance, he crossed paths with Wallace Beery. Beery, who despised Healy for his sharp tongue, didn't bother with words. Together with two accomplices, rumored to be a cousin of Albert R. Broccoli, the future James Bond producer, and a local gangster, Beery began methodically beating Healy into submission right in front of stunned bystanders. This wasn't a fight, it was an execution. Beery, endowed with immense physical strength, struck with such savage fury that it left no doubt about the outcome. The next morning, Ted Healy was found dead in his bed. The official coroner's report read acute alcohol poisoning and cerebral hemorrhage. But witnesses to the assault knew the truth. All of Hollywood knew the truth. Healy died from a brutal beating. That's when the all-powerful MGM machine went to work. Louis B. Mayer, the head of the studio, understood perfectly well. If their top star went down for murder, the studio would lose millions. Within hours, a full-scale cleanup operation was launched. Witnesses were threatened, bribed, and some simply vanished from the city. Wallace Beery himself was immediately sent on an extended vacation to Europe, supposedly to recover his health. The Los Angeles police, firmly on the payroll of the film moguls, closed the case for lack of evidence. A man's murder was quietly transformed into a drunken accident. Beery returned a few months later as if nothing had happened and went right back to playing kindly old men, while Healy's family was left with nothing and the killer's name was scrubbed from the records. Beery was uncontrollable. His colleagues despised him. Child actress Margaret O'Brien later recalled how he would pinch her until she bruised when the camera wasn't rolling, simply because he hated child actors. He was a sadist who knew he was untouchable. His descent into violence was absolute because the system had effectively granted him a license to kill. But if Beery destroyed lives with his fists, the next star turned his entire existence into a twisted performance, one where the line between pleasure and death was erased completely. Albert Dekker, if Wallace Beery was a primal force crushing skulls in parking lots, then Albert Dekker represented the pinnacle of Hollywood evolution, or rather, its deepest and darkest abyss. Dekker was not just an actor. He was an intellectual, a refined character performer known for The Killers and The Wild Bunch. More than that, he was a respected public figure, a member of the California State Assembly, a man who spoke from lofty platforms about morality and the rule of law. But on May 5, 1968, Hollywood recoiled in horror when police forced open the door of his apartment in the Hollywood Hills. What they found there didn't merely destroy Dekker's reputation, it haunted seasoned detectives in their nightmares for the rest of their lives. Dekker was discovered in his bathroom. He had been dead for several days. He was wearing nothing but silk women's lingerie and high heels, and that was only the surface of the madness. His hands were cuffed behind his back with steel restraints, a leather noose tightened around his neck and attached to a shower rod. His eyes and mouth were sealed with tape. His entire body was covered in writing, scrawled in lipstick, obscene words and cryptic symbols. Hypodermic needles were embedded in both of his arms. This was not murder in the conventional sense. After a grim investigation, police reached a shocking conclusion. an accidental death during a dangerous sexual ritual involving self-inflicted suffocation. For years, Decker had lived a double life that spiraled completely out of control. By day, a respected politician shaping laws; by night, a captive of his own compulsions. He sought extreme sensations in the darkest corners of Los Angeles, entangling himself with criminals and underground circles devoted to domination and pain. His loss of control lay in crossing the line where flirting with death becomes the real thing. Investigators determined that Decker himself had let guests into his home, paid enforcers from the city's shadow world, hired to act out his most extreme fantasies. But that night, something went wrong. Whether the drugs administered went too far, or whether his partners deliberately abandoned him when they realized he was suffocating, remains unclear. They simply left, taking his money and valuables, leaving a Hollywood icon to decay alone in his bathtub, reduced to a grotesque spectacle. Studios and political allies tried to bury the story, to pass it off as a simple heart attack. But photographs from the scene leaked to the press. The world saw what lay behind the mask of respectability, a man devoured alive by his own inner demons. Albert Decker became a symbol of how hidden vices can turn a life into a private torture chamber. But if Decker destroyed only himself, the next star on our list was willing to set the entire world around her on fire. A beauty whose obsession with flames and alcohol made her a living threat to every home she ever entered.
Linda Darnell was a woman of such blinding beauty that in the 1940s she was called the most perfect face in Hollywood. The executives at 20th Century Fox practically worshipped her, while audiences saw her as a celestial being stepped down from the canvases of the great masters. She was a noir icon, a fatal temptress in Blood and Sand, and the embodiment of purity in The Song of Bernadette. Yet behind that divine facade lived a person whose mind had been left in ruins by the merciless Hollywood machine. Linda Darnell was not merely a broken actress. She was a volatile, uncontrollable presence, fueled by two of the most destructive forces imaginable: endless alcohol and a deep, almost mystical fascination with fire. Her downfall began when Hollywood, true to form, decided to replace an aging 30-year-old star with younger faces. Linda didn't just feel hurt, she shattered. Alone in her vast mansion, she drowned her despair in liquor, transforming from a glamorous social figure into an erratic shadow of herself. It was during this period that her most unsettling trait emerged. As a child, she had suffered from an intense fear of fire. Years in Hollywood twisted that fear into its opposite. She could sit for hours, transfixed by the flame of a candle. Soon, small fires no longer satisfied her. In hotels where she stayed, staff increasingly found scorched carpets, singed curtains, and strange traces of ash in unlikely places. Studio publicists spent small fortunes bribing managers to ensure headlines like "Linda Darnell sets her room on fire" never appeared. She was dangerous precisely because her instability was quiet and almost elegant until the first match was struck. Her final loss of control came in the early 1960s. Linda had lost everything: contracts, money, marriages. She became an unwelcome guest at social gatherings because no one knew what she might do next, erupt into a scene or set something alight in the middle of dinner. The tragic end arrived on April 10, 1965. Linda was staying in Chicago with her former secretary. They spent the evening drinking and watching an old film on television, Stardust, in which Linda appeared young, radiant, and full of promise. Confronted with her own ghost on screen, the contrast proved unbearable. She spiraled into a severe alcoholic breakdown. What happened later that night has remained deeply disturbing. The official report claimed she had fallen asleep with a lit cigarette, but the fire that followed was devastating. When firefighters arrived, they were struck by one chilling detail: Linda had made no attempt to escape. Neighbors later said they saw a woman's silhouette standing motionless in a burning room, as if mesmerized by the element she had summoned for so long.
She stood and watched as the flames consumed her life, her memories, and the beauty that had once defined her. She was pulled from the ruins still alive, but gravely injured. The face adored by millions was gone. She lingered for several hours without regaining consciousness. Linda Darnell proved one brutal truth. In Hollywood, there is nothing more dangerous than a woman with nothing left to lose and a matchbook in her pocket. She was a living bomb that eventually detonated, leaving behind only ashes and the bitter scent of burned illusions.
Charles Laughton was not merely an actor. He was a living monument to British grandeur planted in the heart of Hollywood. A colossus, an intellectual with aristocratic manners and a voice powerful enough to make theater walls tremble. He was respected, feared, worshipped for his performances in Mutiny on the Bounty and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yet behind the facade of the great artist lurked a man whose brilliant intellect had been poisoned by a profound, almost pathological hatred of himself and the world around him. Laughton did not just portray tyrants, he was one. His loss of control took the form of something far more disturbing than brute violence: cold, calculated psychological sadism. Unlike street thugs, Laughton didn't destroy people with his fists. He killed with words, methodically and mercilessly dissecting the human psyche in front of dozens of witnesses. Laughton's danger lay in his absolute need for total domination. On set, his loss of control resembled the work of a pathologist. He would select a victim, most often a young, inexperienced actor or actress with fragile self-confidence, and begin a public dismantling of their personality. He wielded his erudition like a scalpel, identifying the most sensitive insecurities and cutting straight into them. If he sensed that an actress was anxious about her appearance, he could spend hours in front of the entire crew lecturing on her hopeless mediocrity and ugliness no amount of makeup could conceal. He reduced people to hysterical tears, to nervous breakdowns, to a state where they could no longer speak from sheer terror. And when his victim finally collapsed into despair, Laughton would offer a thin, icy smile and say, "Now there's at least a drop of truth in your eyes. Now we can shoot." His sadism knew no limits because Laughton was obsessed with controlling every aspect of a production. If a director dared to challenge his genius vision, Charles turned the entire set into a carefully engineered hell. He sabotaged filming with masterful cruelty, faking seizures, retreating into days of glacial silence that paralyzed production, or deliberately ruining take after take, forcing crews to work 20-hour days until lighting technicians collapsed from exhaustion. He was uncontrollable because he knew the studio would never fire the great Laughton, the man on whom millions of dollars depended. That knowledge gave him a license for psychological terror. Yet the darkest and most dangerous side of Laughton existed behind the closed doors of his mansion. His marriage to actress Elsa Lanchester was little more than a stage set, a convenient cover for a life filled with deviations that in the 1930s and 40s could have ended with execution or life imprisonment. Elsa later admitted that living with a genius meant enduring endless humiliation and fear. Laughton lost control in the underground clubs of Los Angeles, where he indulged in excesses that bordered on criminal. He was a regular in notorious venues, repeatedly seen in the company of minors and hardened criminals. Each time, Paramount's legal department moved faster than the police, buying up photographic negatives and silencing witnesses permanently. Laughton's true danger lay in his intellectual superiority. He was a predator who believed talent granted him the right to destroy other people's lives. There are documented cases of actors who, after working with Lawton, abandoned the profession entirely or ended up in psychiatric institutions, suffering from severe depression, unable to recover from his lessons. He didn't merely play monsters, he cultivated one within himself, feeding it with the fear and suffering of those weaker than him. Charles Lawton was an uncontrollable force of psychological violence, an architect of pain who left behind dozens of shattered lives, hidden forever in the shadow of his celebrated roles.
Bela Lugosi didn't simply play Count Dracula in 1931. He committed a kind of mystical suicide, allowing the ancient vampire to devour his identity completely. A Hungarian immigrant with a hypnotic, unsettling gaze and an accent heavy as a tombstone, he became a prisoner of the role that lifted him to immortality and cursed him in the same breath. On screen, his cruelty was wrapped in elegance and restraint. Off-camera, Lugosi spiraled into an uncontrollable, dangerously unstable addict whose loss of control terrified even the most cynical power brokers in Hollywood. He became cinema's first living example of how iconic fame can turn a man into a monster, one whose thirst for blood was replaced by a craving for morphine. Lugosi's danger lay in his absolute, all-consuming dependence on morphine and methadone. It began with a leg injury during World War I, something mundane and survivable, but in Hollywood it metastasized into a lifelong nightmare. By the mid-1940s, Bela no longer understood where stage makeup ended and reality began. His loss of control took on the shape of genuine madness. He would arrive on set dressed head to toe as Dracula, his face chalk white, his eyes bloodshot and burning. In the grip of drug-induced psychosis, he attacked colleagues with antique daggers or heavy candelabras, insisting he could smell their life force. This wasn't method acting, it was neurological decay driven by opiates. Crews refused to work with him. Lugosi might freeze in the middle of a take, muttering incoherently in Hungarian, or explode into violent rage, assaulting makeup artists for stealing his immortality through mirrors. What made Lugosi truly dangerous was his complete unpredictability. One notorious incident involved the actor barricading himself inside his mansion while under the influence of massive doses of narcotics, armed with a loaded revolver. He became convinced that vampire hunters and rival studio spies were closing in. He ran from room to room, firing at shadows and reflections in the windows, nearly killing his own wife and young son, who were hiding in terror in the basement. Universal Studios spent enormous sums bribing police officials to keep such episodes out of the press, but the collapse of the legend could not be concealed. His home became a reeking crypt, saturated with the stench of chemicals, decay, and paranoia. Bela spent his last money on illegal substances, turning his house into a gathering point for some of the most dangerous dealers in Los Angeles, who exploited the helplessness and madness of the aging star. His descent reached its lowest point when Lugosi, abandoned by every major studio, began appearing in the cheap, chaotic films of Ed Wood Jr. By then, he was a walking corpse. He wandered the backstreets of Hollywood in his old, moth-eaten black cape, frightening passers-by with sudden laughter and erratic lunges. He would grab strangers by the throat in public, convinced he was still his screen persona, and only police intervention prevented serious harm. In 1955, exhausted and penniless, he became the first major celebrity to publicly admit to drug addiction, hoping for compassion. Hollywood offered none.
Even in a psychiatric clinic, he never abandoned his role. He demanded that no sunlight be allowed into his room and attempted to hypnotize orderlies into bringing him drugs. Bela Lugosi died alone, leaving behind only debts and a legacy soaked in tragedy. He was buried in the same black cape, the symbol of his greatness and his final madness. He was dangerous because he destroyed the lives of everyone who loved him, turning their existence into a never-ending nightmare. He proved that Hollywood can create a real monster, one that continues to haunt the world.
Gail Russell was one of the most ethereal, almost ghost-like beauties of the 1940s. Her enormous eyes, filled with melancholy and buried fear, her fragile frame and porcelain skin made her seem born for gothic thrillers and film noir. Paramount Pictures saw her as a goldmine, a future icon destined to eclipse the brightest stars of her era. But Gail carried a terrifying flaw that would eventually turn her life into chaos. She was pathologically, cripplingly shy. To step beneath the blinding studio lights and speak while cameras stared her down, she needed help. What began as a few drops of alcohol for courage spiraled into uncontrollable madness, transforming Gail Russell into one of the most dangerous women in Hollywood, a lethal threat to every driver and pedestrian on California's roads. Gail's danger lay in her total loss of contact with reality when intoxicated. Her loss of control didn't erupt at parties or premieres, it happened behind the wheel. She loved speed, yet had no ability to control a car while drunk, turning herself into an unstoppable force of destruction. In 1953, an incident occurred that should have ended her freedom and removed her from the streets forever. In the grip of a severe alcoholic psychosis, Gail slammed her car at full speed straight through the glass front of the Jan's Drive-In restaurant. The vehicle tore into the dining area where dozens of people were eating. Shards of glass and twisted metal exploded in all directions. By sheer luck, no one was killed on the spot, though several people were horribly injured and left permanently disabled. When police dragged Gail from the wreckage, she was completely detached from reality. She couldn't stand or speak. She simply stared at the bloodied bodies among the debris and smiled, blankly, eerily. Hollywood, however, continued its filthy game. Studio lawyers pulled her out of jail again and again, paid massive settlements to the victims, and buried her repeated drunk driving cases, more than 7 by that point. Gail was utterly uncontrollable. She would climb behind the wheel, barely able to stand, and drive off into the night, searching for truth on Los Angeles highways, turning her car into a steel projectile weighing over a ton. She was known publicly as a quiet angel, but on the road she was a serial killer in waiting. There were documented incidents where she drove at full speed into oncoming traffic, racing for miles as terrified drivers swerved into ditches and slammed into poles to avoid her, while she remained lost in an alcoholic or drug-induced haze, unaware of the devastation she caused. Her inner darkness endangered everyone who tried to save her. Doctors, social workers, and the few friends who attempted to take away her car keys or her next bottle were met with sudden, violent outbursts of rage. Gail turned her once elegant home into a filthy wasteland, buried under empty bottles, mountains of cigarette butts, and rotting food. She lived in isolation, leaving the house only to drink again and unleash fresh havoc on the roads. Eventually, even Hollywood turned its back on her. Insurance premiums for her participation in films exceeded any possible profit, and the risk that she might kill someone in full view of the paparazzi became too great. She became an outcast, a leper of the golden age. Gail Russell's end was as quiet and as disturbing as the years that followed her fame. In 1961, she was found dead in her neglected apartment, surrounded by empty alcohol containers. She was only 36 years old. She died from liver failure and total physical collapse after decades of uncontrolled binge drinking. Gail Russell was dangerous because her vulnerability and weakness proved more destructive than open rage. She was a fragile creature who came terrifyingly close to destroying dozens of innocent lives in her endless drunken spirals. She proved one grim truth. In Hollywood, even an angel with sad eyes can become a horseman of the apocalypse if no one stops them, and if the system chooses to cover up their crimes instead.
Skip Homeier entered Hollywood history as one of the most unsettling child actors ever to appear on screen, a boy whose presence made audiences instinctively tense. His danger did not lie in extraordinary acting technique, but in something far darker. He didn't merely portray evil, he seemed to embody it. In 1943, at just 13 years old, he shocked the public with his role as a fanatical young Nazi in the propaganda film Hitler's Children. Viewers were disturbed by how convincingly the teenager radiated hatred, cold calculation, and blind devotion to violence. The true horror, however, was that Skip wasn't getting into character. He was simply revealing a deeply warped inner nature. Homeier became a living symbol of uncontrolled malice, someone who took pleasure in domination and cruelty, using film sets as a sanctioned arena for his impulses. Homeier's danger fully emerged the moment he tasted the power that came with being a star, especially power over adults. His loss of control wasn't a tantrum or youthful rebellion, it was pathological. He possessed an almost instinctive attraction to aggression, something studio executives long dismissed as the difficult temperament of a gifted child. On set, Skip was a nightmare even for hardened professionals. He delighted in provoking fear and conflict, choosing moments when authority figures weren't watching. There were disturbing reports of him deliberately setting traps meant to hurt or humiliate fellow actors, simply to enjoy their shock and pain when something went wrong during a scene. During staged fight sequences, Homeier abandoned any sense of restraint. He intentionally struck with real force, ignoring choreography and safety, driven by a need to overpower. In one incident on a Western set, he went so far that several crew members had to physically restrain him to prevent serious harm to another performer. Witnesses later recalled the same chilling intensity in his eyes that had made his screen performance so memorable. Not anger, but something closer to exhilaration at having absolute control over another human being. Homeier was uncontrollable because he rejected authority from an early age. He openly despised rules, limits, and consequences. Behind the scenes, he earned the nickname Little Hitler, not as a joke, but as a grim acknowledgement of his behavior. Growing older did nothing to temper him. Away from the camera, he cultivated the image of a street tough, constantly seeking confrontation. Law enforcement encountered him repeatedly for violent altercations, yet consequences never seemed to stick. Hollywood needed villains, and the industry continued to employ him, ignoring the reality that his cruelty was not an act, but a defining trait. His greatest danger lay in his volatility. One moment he could appear calm, even courteous. The next he would erupt into uncontrollable rage if he felt slighted. Fear was his currency. He deliberately intimidated young actresses, using threats and psychological pressure to assert dominance. By the mid-1950s, his reputation had become so toxic that even the most reckless filmmakers began to keep their distance. He was seen as an unstable element, a human time bomb capable of crossing an irreversible line at any moment. Skip Homeier never escaped the shadow of his infamous Nazi role, because that role reflected who he truly was. He faded into obscurity, relegated to minor television appearances, largely forgotten by the industry that once exploited his darkness. Yet his legacy within Hollywood's golden age is a harsh one, proof that cinema doesn't always create monsters. Sometimes it simply reveals them. He lived immersed in aggression and fear, and that raw, unfiltered cruelty is what made him genuinely terrifying.
Mary Astor. If Skip Homier was dangerous with his fists, Mary Astor wielded a weapon far more devastating and far-reaching: the truth, fixed on paper with an executioner's pedantry. The star of the legendary The Maltese Falcon, an Academy Award winner and the very image of Hollywood elegance, she appeared to the public as the embodiment of aristocratic grace and refinement. Yet behind that flawless facade lived a woman whose ungovernable appetite for sexual experimentation, marathon drinking, and forbidden pleasures nearly derailed not only her own career, but also the lives of some of the most powerful people in the United States. Mary Astor was dangerous because she was a chronicler of vice, a woman who turned her private life into meticulously documented compromat capable of blowing American society apart from within. Her loss of control became public knowledge in 1936, when a quiet custody battle over her daughter erupted into the filthiest scandal of the decade. Mary's former husband, Dr. Franklin Thorpe, broke into her personal safe and stole her diary, 2 thick leather-bound notebooks filled with elegant handwriting in violet ink. What he found there was no girlish memoir. It was a record of unrelenting moral collapse. Astor wrote with a chilling, almost scientific thoroughness, describing her encounters with lovers that included top actors, directors, multimillionaires, and most alarmingly, high-ranking politicians from Washington. Her candor was unrestrained. Each lover's sexual abilities were graded on a 10-point scale, accompanied by detailed descriptions of acts that, at the time, were considered criminal deviations. The danger of Mary Astor lay in the fact that her diary became an atomic bomb in the hands of blackmailers and the press. When fragments began to leak into newspapers, panic seized both Hollywood and the White House. The diary named the celebrated playwright George S. Kaufman, whose bed marathons with Mary were chronicled across 10 pages with an enthusiasm that made even hardened investigators blush. Studio heads understood the stakes. If the diary were read aloud in court in its entirety, the industry would shatter. The Hays Code would be trampled into dust, and dozens of model family men from the highest levels of power would vanish into political oblivion. But Mary slipped beyond the system's control. Instead of repenting or retreating into the shadows, she calmly acknowledged the diary's authenticity. She did not fear disgrace. She savored the chaos she had unleashed among the mighty, watching great men tremble at the mere mention of violet ink. Her lifestyle was a permanent risk zone. Astor frequented exclusive underground dens where alcohol flowed freely and moral standards did not exist as a concept. She was dangerous in her unpredictability. One day she played the devoted mother on screen, the next she found herself at the center of a drunken orgy in a seedy hotel with peoples whose names the police preferred not to say aloud. Law enforcement repeatedly chose not to notice her excesses because any arrest might provoke Astor into giving a frank interview, one in which she would casually name her companions from those midnight escapes. She effectively held all of Los Angeles hostage to her memory and her notebooks. Even when the court, under immense pressure from studio moguls, ordered the diary destroyed, officially to protect the child from shame, in reality to save the reputation of the elite, Mary did not stop. Her addiction to adrenaline and scandal turned her into a toxic asset. She was a woman who knew too much and believed her fame was armor that allowed her any moral transgression. Mary Astor proved that in Hollywood, information is deadlier than poison. She was an uncontrollable force who permanently shattered the myth of cinematic purity, showing the world that behind the curtain of the Golden Age lurked a true Sodom, in which she was the chief sinner and its cold, impartial historian.
Thomas Mitchell. Thomas Mitchell was one of the most influential and respected character actors in the history of world cinema. In 1939, he accomplished something unprecedented, a kind of Hollywood grand slam. He appeared in 5 films that would enter the eternal canon, including Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Stagecoach, which earned him an Academy Award, and of course, Gone with the Wind. His face, kind, slightly bloated with a wise and forgiving gaze, was synonymous with reliability, honor and paternal warmth. For millions of viewers around the world, he would forever remain Gerald O'Hara, the man who at sunset taught his daughter Scarlett that land was the only thing worth living for. But once the spotlights went dark and Thomas Mitchell reached for his first bottle of whiskey of the evening, the mask of the noble gentleman slipped away, revealing the face of an uncontrollable monster whose loss of control turned the nightlife of Beverly Hills into a disaster zone. Mitchell's danger lay in his phenomenal, almost bestial physical strength and his complete loss of human restraint when intoxicated. This was not the cheerful drunkenness of an Irish bon vivant. It was a deep, black, pulsating rage born of a man who secretly hated his fame, his roles, and above all, himself. His drunken rampages became legend among the owners of elite nightclubs. Mitchell was a regular at exclusive establishments like the Trocadero and Ciro's, places reserved for Hollywood's highest caste, yet even there his arrival inspired quiet dread among security staff. One wrong look, a delayed drink, or an accidental brush of an elbow was enough for the good father from Tara to transform instantly into a ferocious, merciless brute. He did not merely get into fights, he staged calculated, bloody pogroms. There were terrifying incidents in which Mitchell, alone like an enraged bull, demolished massive mahogany bar counters, hurled heavy oak tables into antique mirrors, and beat professional bouncers trained to restrain drunken stars. He struck wildly, not simply to win, but to maim, venting his inner darkness on random victims. Witnesses said that in those moments he looked possessed. He shouted curses in Gaelic and destroyed everything his enormous hands could reach, reducing refined interiors to heaps of splintered wood and shattered crystal. He was completely uncontrollable because his screen image as a saintly man and America's best father served as an armored shield. MGM and Selznick International poured vast resources into ensuring that reports of his rampages never crossed the threshold of police stations. An entire cleanup system existed. The moment Mitchell left another wrecked restaurant, men in dark suits from the studio's legal department would arrive. They silently placed stacks of cash on the table, covering damages worth thousands of dollars and purchasing the lifelong silence of witnesses and victims. Behind the scenes, however, he was feared no less than he was in bars. During the filming of Gone with the Wind, Thomas regularly showed up with knuckles split open and eyes swollen shut, injuries makeup artists spent hours concealing so he could play a respectable plantation owner. His rages were just as unpredictable on set. He could abruptly halt a scene, lunge at a cameraman with threats of physical violence over incorrect lighting, or explode over the slightest stumble by a co-star, turning the set into a site of psychological terror. His danger was hidden but systemic. Thomas Mitchell was a man of monstrous double standards who despised the Hollywood system while eagerly exploiting its protection to continue his destructive lifestyle. He was a potential threat to anyone who shared a room with him after midnight. One incident is well known. Enraged by the quality of a steak at a restaurant, Mitchell overturned the table directly onto an elderly couple and began smashing dishes over the heads of the rushing waiters. Only because the victims were devoted admirers of his work and because the studio immediately paid them an extravagant settlement did the incident avoid a prison sentence. Thomas Mitchell became living proof that Hollywood's golden age was built on a foundation of total hypocrisy and purchased justice. He was an uncontrollable alcoholic with sadistic tendencies who hid his true, terrifying nature for decades behind the masks of noble, wise, and loving heroes. His life was a prolonged plunge into the abyss, and only mountains of studio money kept him from crashing into the bottom of social ruin. Yet even the full power of the world's largest film companies could not conceal what happened with
Richard Burton. If all the previous figures in our chronicle were merely localized outbreaks of madness, Richard Burton was a full-scale catastrophe of planetary proportions. The greatest actor of his generation, a man with a voice that, as critics aptly put it, could make stones weep and the heavens tremble, Burton possessed a truly diabolical talent for destroying everything he touched. He did not simply lose control from time to time. He lived at the epicenter of a permanent explosion, fueled by liters of hard liquor and an ancient primal rage carried with him from the impoverished mining towns of Wales. His life with Elizabeth Taylor, which the world's media syrupily dubbed the romance of the century, was in reality a prolonged, blood-soaked war zone, saturated with the stench of whiskey, gunpowder, blood, and shattered crystal. Burton was lethally dangerous because his fury was intellectual, reinforced by immense physical strength and an absolute icy contempt for law, morality, and public opinion. Burton's danger lay in his extreme, nearly superhuman capacity for alcohol. During his prolonged downward spirals, he consumed 3 to 4 bottles of vodka a day, not merely remaining upright, but transforming into an uncontrollable engine of chaos. His loss of control during the filming of the historical colossus Cleopatra nearly bankrupted 20th Century Fox. Richard could vanish from the set for days, and when he was finally tracked down in yet another den of excess, he would erupt into brutal fights with security and police, relying on the instincts of a seasoned street brawler. He struck hard, coldly, and with unmistakable pleasure. No one was untouchable. He could publicly insult royalty to their faces, beat influential producers during a business lunch, or unleash a monumental rampage in London's elite Dorchester Hotel, leaving suites looking as though a cavalry division had charged through them. The damage ran into tens of thousands of pounds, but Burton merely flung his checkbook at the managers with open contempt. Yet the most horrifying and destructive manifestation of his danger was the systematic psychological and physical annihilation of those closest to him. His marriage to Taylor was steeped in violence they both insisted on calling passion. Witnesses and household staff recalled how, in fits of Celtic rage, Burton became a sadist. He smashed antique furniture, kicked down doors, and hurled priceless jewelry and heavy objects at Elizabeth, intent on inflicting real pain. He was utterly uncontrollable in his pathological jealousy and profound self-loathing, venting his inner darkness on the people he loved most. There were notorious incidents on film sets when Burton descended into such frenzy that he began destroying expensive sets and lighting equipment in the middle of a take, convinced a co-star was playing with insufficient sincerity or stealing his spotlight. His rage was contagious like a plague, drawing hundreds into its orbit and forcing entire crews to exist in a state of constant, paralyzing fear of his next explosion. Burton was dangerous because he was effectively invulnerable. The world worshipped his talent so completely that it forgave him everything: wrecked multi-million-dollar contracts, maimed paparazzi, public brawls, and obliterated property. He openly despised Hollywood and its plastic rules, considering himself above any social system. But this boundless arrogance and uncontrollable drive towards self-destruction eventually began to burn him from the inside. By the end of his life, Burton had become a full-blown paranoiac. He slept with a hunting knife under his pillow, constantly anticipating conspiracies and seeing mortal enemies in every sound behind the door. His brain, battered for decades by ethanol, began producing grotesque hallucinations in which he fought again and again with the ghosts of his brutal childhood and imagined rivals. Richard Burton died at the age of 58 from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. His blood vessels simply could not withstand the pressure of rage and alcohol he had built up over years. He left behind mountains of empty bottles, ruined marriages, drained bank accounts, and scorched earth in the souls of all who had the misfortune to love him. He became the final, loudest chord in our list, a man who proved that the most terrifying and unpredictable monster in Hollywood history.
As we conclude our descent into the abyss concealed behind the glittering facade of Hollywood's golden age, we arrive at an unsettling conclusion. Those the world exalted as icons and ideals were often the most broken and dangerous beings of their time. We are accustomed to viewing old Hollywood through a nostalgic sepia lens as an era of noble heroes and impeccable ladies, yet behind that image stood a colossal industrial meat grinder that did not merely crush destinies but manufactured true monsters. The stories we have examined, from the bestial cruelty of Wallace Beery to the alcoholic apocalypse of Richard Burton, are not isolated cases of deviant behavior. They are symptoms of a systemic disease. The studios created gods, endowed them with absolute power and obscene wealth, while stripping them of the one thing that matters most: human responsibility. When an actor is forgiven for killing, as Beery was, or allowed to turn a film set into a chamber of psychological torture, as Lawton did, the boundary between reality and total impunity is erased forever. This loss of control was sanctioned by the system itself. As long as a star generated profit, their madness was dismissed as temperament, and their crimes were written off as unfortunate misunderstandings. We saw Linda Darnell seeking solace in fire, Gail Russell turning her car into a weapon of death, and Mary Astor documenting the collapse of an entire generation in her Diary of Sin. All of them were captives of gilded cages where the only way to feel alive was through destruction of themselves or of others. Hollywood of that era resembled a laboratory for breeding superhumans whose conscience had atrophied while their ego had grown grotesquely oversized. And today, as we revisit immortal classics, we must remember that beneath the layers of makeup and the glare of studio lights beat the hearts of people who were often incapable of mastering their own demons. These 10 stories are merely the tip of the iceberg, a tiny fragment of the vast archive of pain and violence that still lies buried in studio basements. They remind us that the price of screen immortality is often paid in pure madness, and that the brilliance of the stars is only the reflection of the fire in which their human souls were consumed. All that remains is to wonder how many more names and terrifying secrets time has swallowed, and how many angels were, in truth, executioners whose crimes were never exposed in service of the great illusion of cinema. Our investigation ends here. You have looked behind the curtain Hollywood hoped to keep closed forever. If these stories struck a nerve, then the truth has finally found its listener.
If you enjoyed this documentary and want to see more deep dives into the real history behind famous fairy tales, forgotten mysteries, organized crime, old Hollywood, true crime, psychology, and the stories hiding beneath the surface, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Bambi Palermo and the Pizzaverse. Hit the like button. Leave a comment with your own theory about what happened in Hamelin. Was it migration? A tragedy? A cover-up? Or something no historian has considered? Share this documentary with someone who still thinks the Pied Piper was just a bedtime story. And if you'd like to help support the channel, check out the links below for exclusive content, merchandise, and everything happening around the Pizzaverse. Remember, we don't rewrite history. We excavate it. To every member of the Pizzaverse, thank you. Whether you've been here since the beginning or you just discovered the channel today, thank you for spending your time with us. Your support allows these documentaries to grow bigger, dive deeper, and uncover stories that deserve to be remembered. Every view, every comment, every like, and every subscription helps keep independent storytelling alive. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never stop asking questions. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, this is Ghostophical Pizzaverse mascot, and this has been another Pizzaverse Studios documentary. Thanks for watching. In today's digital wasteland, everybody's a legend, everybody's an alpha, everybody's a philosopher, and somehow everybody apparently knows exactly who you're dealing with. Amazing. But what happens when your online image requires constant maintenance? Introducing BK's Internet Tough Guy Survival System. Because reality is optional. Tired of ordinary conversations ending peacefully? Wish every minor disagreement felt like a pay-per-view event? Want people to immediately know you're serious without ever actually saying anything serious? Well, congratulations. Science has finally answered the call nobody made. Inside every BK survival system, you'll receive one deluxe Inventory Flex package. Perfect for turning everyday objects into personality traits, because why have hobbies when you can just point at stuff? You'll also receive the Livestream Warrior expansion pack, includes emergency loyalty speeches, volume increased technology, 3 backup motivational quotes, and our patented "Brother, you don't know who you're dealing with" button TM. Just press once and immediately transform any ordinary discussion into WrestleMania. Talking about weather, brother? Discussing pizza toppings? Brother, arguing over Wi-Fi speed? Brother, no situation too small. But wait, order in the next 10 minutes and receive the Digital Peacock Elite package. Featuring extra chest thumping, advanced parking lot philosophy, and over 6 straight hours of uninterrupted respect, honor, loyalty, strength, respect again, and confidence speeches. Because if you repeat words enough, eventually they become a personality. Probably. Researchers remain uncertain. Side effects may include excessive live streaming, random wrestling promos, chronic comment section energy, volume spikes, confusing Facebook behavior, and sudden urges to cut speeches at 2 in the morning. Do not operate heavy machinery while experiencing Internet Tough Guy syndrome. BK's Internet Tough Guy Survival System, big energy online, results not guaranteed. Order now, because reality is getting suspicious.
Give me groceries and booze. Give me FaceTime with my friends. Give me intravenous news. Little drips of CNN. Give me meditation apps. Text me pictures of your dog. Just give me life. Give me peace. Give me noise. Someone give me fucking zen. Someone give me fucking zen.
At least 6 feet, dig my grave just as deep. I got sex on my mind all the time. Fuck, scrolling through the internet, time suck. I've been feeling flat like a pancake. I could use a hug or a handshake. I could use some drugs or a band-aid. Cooped up in a hole, I wanna lose all my control. I wanna just go on a rampage. Give me wisdom, give me teeth. Give me vision, let me see. Give me courage to confess. Every night I text my ex. Give me girls, give me boys. Give me life, give me peace. Give me noise, someone give me fucking zen.
Yeah. Give me an appetite, give me hope for the afterlife, or a reason to look past tonight. Give me happiness when I found the fame. Give me music that doesn't all sound the same. Give me something that I could look forward to. Give me humans that I could get closer to. You look down at me, but the next thing you know, it's you with the rent overdue. Give me a little bit of piece of your peace of mind. Give me a piece of yours, you'll get the peace of mind. Give me something to do when there's nothing to do, but when I get it, shit, I'll probably just fuck it up too. Give me 2 steps to the left, give me 1 step to the right. Give me 1 dance with the volume at 10 and someone, anyone, give me fucking zen. Someone give me fucking zen. Give me fucking zen. I need something to avoid all of my fears and paranoia. Give me someone, give me hope for something better. Give me justice for my cries. Tell me we're all in this together, and if we're not, then tell me lies. Give me love, give me Wi-Fi, give me drugs, give me sky